Imagine a realm where the very laws of physics surrender to silence, where the heavy burdens of the world simply evaporate into the dark. High above the sleeping continents, a silver sanctuary glides through the vacuum, holding the breath of humanity within its metallic walls. This is a place where the passage of a single day is shattered into a mesmerizing rhythm of 16 glorious sunrises and 16 brilliant sunsets. Picture a delicate green sprout beneath the artificial lights of a growth chamber, completely disoriented by the infinite. Its roots behave like lost explorers, wandering through a dark, weightless forest in a chaotic, beautiful rebellion against the memory of the ground. Here, the drive for life must reinvent its internal compass, reaching boldly into the void without the guiding hand of a planet. Deep within the quiet corridors of this floating laboratory, the human form itself is secretly and miraculously rewritten. The spine, no longer crushed by the invisible hand of the atmosphere, slowly elongates and stretches toward a new, elegant potential. The heart, relieved of its lifelong upward struggle, relaxes into a perfect sphere of rhythmic tranquility. Surprisingly, you do not need to board a rocket to experience this profound floating peace. As you lie here in the stillness of your room, the heavy gravity of the day is already beginning to release its hold on your tired muscles. You're safe, wrapped securely in the warmth of your blankets, as the quiet hum of the night settles over you like a protective shield. This quiet room is your own personal sanctuary, perfectly tethered to the turning world yet entirely open to the endless possibilities of the dark. Your breathing slows, matching the steady, majestic glide of the space station, passing silently miles above your roof. These wonders are yours to inherit as you sleep, drifting weightless in the deep, calm ocean of your own consciousness. If we were to look closer at the boundary between waking and dreaming, we would find a quiet threshold that perfectly mirrors the edge of the atmosphere. The mind finally lets go of the solid floor, allowing the physical shell to prepare for its own deeply earned liberation. Freed from the relentless, invisible weight of gravity, the human body begins a silent and miraculous transformation almost immediately upon crossing the metallic threshold into orbit. Freed from the relentless, invisible weight of gravity, the human body begins a silent and miraculous transformation almost immediately upon crossing the metallic threshold into orbit. The gentle release of pressure from the spine and joints allows the vertebrae to drift softly apart, like beads on a loosened string. This newly discovered freedom permits the intervertebral discs to expand and fill with fluid, stretching the body into a longer, more elegant posture. Within mere hours of escaping the massive planetary pull, an astronaut can spontaneously grow up to 2 full inches in height. Muscles that have spent a lifetime fighting to hold the skeletal structure upright suddenly find themselves completely relieved of duty. The tension that anchors a person to the earth dissolves into an oceanic sense of weightlessness. Floating through the quiet, metallic corridors of a spacecraft, this elongated frame moves with an effortless, aquatic grace. Yet, this newfound stature is a temporary gift borrowed from the cosmos. The moment the traveller returns to the crushing embrace of terrestrial gravity, the spine will compress once again, carrying the heavy memory of its time in the stars. Deep within the chest, the central engine of human circulation undergoes a profound anatomical shift when lifted away from the downward tug of the world below. For decades, the human heart works tirelessly as a muscular pump, fundamentally shaped by the need to push heavy blood upward against the constant force of gravity. Relieved of this strenuous vertical burden, the organ physically relaxes into a completely new geometry. Surrendered to the gentle physics of microgravity, the heart slowly loses its familiar elongated form and assumes a perfectly spherical shape. This rounded configuration is the ultimate expression of biological efficiency in a weightless void. The cardiac muscle no longer needs to beat with the same aggressive force to overcome hydrostatic pressure, allowing the resting heart rate to drop into a state of deep, continuous tranquility. Even as it floats perfectly round within the ribcage, the heart continues to orchestrate the flow of life with quiet precision. It adapts beautifully to the serenity of the orbital environment, a glowing globe of vitality floating in the darkness. This transformation is a stunning reminder of how malleable our most vital physiological structures truly are. Surprisingly, the upward shift of bodily fluids paints a completely different portrait of the human face once it reaches the quiet expanse of space. On Earth, gravity constantly pulls blood and water down toward the lower extremities, keeping the legs full and the facial features sharply defined. In the absence of this downward force, nearly 2 litres of fluid migrate toward the chest and head, fundamentally altering the traveller's physical appearance. This dramatic internal tide causes the facial tissues to puff up slightly, smoothing out wrinkles and granting the skin a perpetually flushed youthful appearance. The subtle hollows of the cheeks fill in, and the eyes may narrow just a fraction as the surrounding skin plumps with the newly redistributed water. It is as if the body is gently inflating itself against the absolute vacuum outside the hull. At the same time, the legs become remarkably thin, shedding the liquid bulk they once needed to stand against the crushing weight of the atmosphere. This fluid shift creates a unique orbital physiology that scientists commonly refer to as the puffy head, bird leg syndrome. It is a striking visual testament to the body recalibrating its internal oceans to survive the endless sky. Consider the soles of the feet, which bear the immense and punishing weight of human existence from the exact moment we first learned to stand. Decades of walking, running, and simply holding the body upright force the skin to build thick, protective layers of hardened armour. These calluses are the silent biological records of our lifelong friction against the solid, unforgiving ground of our home planet. When stepping into the frictionless embrace of an orbital laboratory, the feet are suddenly retired from their primary terrestrial purpose. Astronauts do not walk, they drift, using merely the soft tops of their toes to hook into handholds or gently push off a metallic bulkhead. Without the constant pressure and friction of a hard floor, the thick calluses on the heels and soles serve no purpose and eventually begin to detach. In a strangely beautiful shedding process, entire layers of dead skin simply peel away, leaving behind skin as soft and sensitive as a newborn infant. The bottoms of the feet become tender and incredibly smooth, completely unaccustomed to the harsh reality of supporting heavy weight. They are entirely reborn by the weightless environment, silently shedding the heavy armour of their terrestrial past. This profound, continuous rest cascades through the intricate musculature of the human back and neck, offering a level of physical relaxation impossible to achieve on a mattress. Every day on the surface of the planet, these postural muscles remain engaged in a silent, exhausting battle to keep the heavy skull balanced and the spine entirely straight. They are the unseen scaffolding of human posture, never truly resting even when we lie down to quietly sleep. Suspended in the absolute zero of orbital physics, this lifelong tension evaporates into the quiet rhythmic hum of the cabin. The neck no longer strains to support the weight of the head, allowing the cervical spine to float perfectly neutral in the air. The broad muscles of the back power down, entering a state of dormant tranquility as the strict concept of up and down loses all physical meaning. Floating in this state feels like dissolving into a warm, supportive ocean where absolutely no pressure points exist to agitate the delicate nerves. It is an unparalleled physical liberation, a complete unburdening of the complex somatic system. The skeletal framework simply drifts within the flesh, completely surrendered to the pure joy of being entirely and endlessly weightless. If we were to look closer at the emotional responses in this harsh and lonely frontier, we would witness how the simple act of crying becomes an otherworldly spectacle. The intense isolation and overwhelming beauty of the cosmos often bring travellers to tears, but gravity is no longer there to pull those drops down the cheeks. Instead of falling, the saline fluid emerges from the tear ducts and aggressively clings to the sensitive surface of the eye. Surface tension, the invisible magnetic force that binds water molecules together takes absolute physical control of the emotional release. The tears pool together into a single shimmering globe of liquid that grows thicker and more obtrusive with every passing moment. This trembling sphere of sorrow or profound joy simply wobbles over the cornea, distorting vision like a thick liquid magnifying glass. To clear the eyes, a spacefarer must manually wipe the thick gel away with a towel, physically breaking the magnetic grip of the floating water. It is a gentle reminder that even our most deeply human expressions are fundamentally altered by the physical laws of the silent void. Weep in the stars and your tears will stay intimately with you, forming a beautiful clinging crown of raw emotion. Hidden deep within the skull lies the vestibular system, a delicate labyrinth of fluid-filled canals that act as the body's ultimate internal gyroscope. For millions of years, this biological sensor has perfectly detected the downward pull of the Earth, flawlessly telling the brain exactly which way is the solid floor. When suddenly launched into the endless freefall of orbital mechanics, this finely tuned instrument enters a state of calm, chaotic confusion. The fluid in the inner ear floats aimlessly, sending scattered and highly contradictory signals to a brain desperately searching for a gravitational anchor. The physical sensation of falling never truly stops, yet the eyes calmly report that the illuminated room is perfectly stable and incredibly still. To prevent crippling disorientation, the neurological network must ruthlessly rewrite its own biological software, learning to completely ignore the panicked whispers of the inner ear. Vision becomes the absolute authority on reality, dictating human balance and spatial awareness entirely through sight alone. A person can float completely upside down relative to a crewmate, yet feel perfectly upright simply because they have consciously decided the ceiling is now their floor. The mind beautifully conquers the biology, allowing the human spirit to effortlessly navigate the multi-directional expanse of the orbital laboratory. Witnessing a sleeping crew member gently drifting in the dim light of the station reveals the truest, most natural resting state of the human physical form. Stripped of the relentless need to resist gravity, the joints and limbs instinctively fold into a surreal semi-crouch position, mathematically known as the neutral body posture. It is a ghostly, beautifully serene silhouette that perfectly mirrors the fetal position of a child resting safely in the womb. The arms float up to mid-chest height, the elbows bending slightly as the relaxed hands curl into soft open curves. The knees draw gently upward toward the torso, the hips tilting backward to release all residual hidden tension from the lower spine. The chin tucks gently down, and the entire body curls into a distinct shape of ultimate zero-resistance comfort. This effortless posture is the exact physiological equilibrium of our muscles and tendons when absolutely zero external forces are applied to them. Engineers must carefully design every workstation, pressurized spacesuit and control panel to perfectly accommodate this natural hovering human crouch. It is the purest physical expression of human relaxation, a biological default setting unlocked only by journeying into the absolute silence of the infinite. This cosmic environment prompts the biological machinery to execute a flawless, silent optimization of the complex circulatory system. On the ground, the body actively works to retain enough fluid to keep blood pressure high, ensuring oxygen can continually climb up to the brain against the invisible weight of the atmosphere. When the environment instantly flips to zero gravity, the delicate sensors in the upper chest suddenly detect an enormous, unexpected flood of returning fluid. Interpreting this massive upward shift as an absolute excess of water, the kidneys are immediately commanded to begin relentlessly flushing the perceived surplus. Over the very first few days of an orbital mission, the human traveller will actively lose nearly a fifth of their total blood volume. The body is not failing, rather it is perfectly calibrating itself to thrive indefinitely in a realm where hydrostatic pressure simply does not exist. Fewer red blood cells are chemically produced, and the sprawling veins gently constrict to tightly accommodate the newly reduced liquid volume. The cardiovascular system rapidly becomes a leaner, far more efficient engine, perfectly tailored for the effortless, gliding reality of floating. It is a stunning display of internal biological alchemy, easily shedding the heavy requirements of Earth to embrace the streamlined existence of a true spacefarer. Every inhalation drawn in this weightless sanctuary feels intimately lighter and far more expansive than the deepest breaths ever taken on solid ground. Back on Earth, the simple, necessary act of breathing requires the diaphragm to tirelessly push against the heavy, invisible blanket of the abdominal organs and the physical weight of the chest wall itself. Gravity insists on making every expansion of the delicate lungs a subtle, lifelong workout for the entire respiratory musculature. Once the relentless grip of the planet falls away, the entire thoracic cavity feels as though it has been instantly hollowed out and entirely filled with helium. The ribcage floats outward with absolutely zero physical resistance, allowing the lung tissue to inflate completely and absolutely without fighting the mass of the surrounding flesh. A deep, lung-filling breath requires barely a tiny whisper of physical effort, filling the bloodstream with vital oxygen in a frictionless, silent glide. The sheer ease of respiration continually contributes to a profound, meditative calmness that slowly washes over the astronauts as they go about their daily tasks. The recycled air itself feels significantly thinner, softer, and entirely separated from the exhausting, lifelong mechanics of terrestrial biological survival. Breathing simply becomes a gentle rhythm, an effortless and entirely invisible tide keeping the fragile traveller alive in the cold expanse of the void. Just as that invisible tide of breath keeps the fragile traveller alive in the cold expanse of the void, the very nature of water undergoes a mesmerizing metamorphosis when it escapes the pull of the ground. Without a downward force to flatten and spread it into puddles, the microscopic bonds holding water molecules together suddenly become the most powerful physical law in the room. Surface tension reigns absolutely supreme, pulling every loose droplet into the most efficient geometric shape the universe allows. These unanchored bodies of water instantly snap into perfectly smooth, crystal-clear spheres that wobble gently as they drift through the pressurized cabin. They're completely emancipated from the necessity of taking the shape of a container, choosing instead to become their own self-contained vessels of rippling light. The molecular skin of the liquid acts like a highly elastic balloon, trembling violently if tapped but refusing to easily break apart. Observing these liquid marbles offers a hypnotic glimpse into the microscopic forces that secretly bind our world together. The spheres hover in the ambient air currents, catching the artificial light and scattering it in brilliant fractured rainbows across the metallic bulkheads. It is a stunning visual poetry, replacing the mundane splash of a spilled drink with a serene, floating ballet of pure fluid mechanics. Deep within the specialized heating chambers of the laboratory, the violent, chaotic process of bringing water to a boil is radically pacified. Down below, convection dictates that hot fluid rises while cooler liquid sinks, creating the familiar rolling boil and thousands of tiny ascending vapor bubbles. Stripped of this thermal buoyancy, the newly heated liquid remains perfectly stagnant, trapping the rising temperature in one incredibly localized spot. Instead of a frantic simmer, the heating element slowly generates a single, monstrous bubble of superheated steam right at the core of the water volume. This giant pocket of vapor undulates and swells with smooth, terrifying grace, trapped within the surrounding liquid by that ever-present surface tension. The violent turbulence we generally associate with boiling is entirely erased, replaced by a strange, pulsating heart of steam that never breaks the surface. This singular, boiling sphere expands continuously until the heat source is finally removed, creating a delicate thermodynamic balance. The surrounding water gently ripples and warps around the expanding vapor, acting more like molten glass than a common beverage. It is an eerie, silent demonstration of how the fundamental transfer of thermal energy, completely changes its visual language in the high frontier. Surprisingly, the simple act of wringing out a wet washcloth reveals a profound, gelatinous defiance against human effort. When the fabric is twisted in the hands, the water is forcefully squeezed out from between the woven fibres, but it has absolutely nowhere to fall. Denied the permission to splash downward, the displaced liquid frantically searches for the nearest surface to desperately cling onto. The extracted moisture forms a thick, transparent tube of water that immediately engulfs the fabric and aggressively climbs over the hands of the person holding it. It behaves almost identically to a heavy, clinging gel, wrapping around the fingers and wrists like a shimmering liquid glove. No amount of wringing or shaking will cast the water away. It simply ripples heavily across the skin, stubbornly held in place by its own sticky cohesion. To dry the hands, the liquid must be forcefully wiped onto a dry towel, physically breaking the relentless magnetic grip of the surface tension. The water acts as a single, unified entity, moving seamlessly over the knuckles and pooling in the webbing of the fingers. The everyday chore of cleaning up transforms into a surreal, tactile struggle against a fluid that refuses to let go. As your own hands rest comfortably in your lap, feeling the dry, solid friction of the physical world, consider how drastically different it would be to fight against water that truly clings. If we were to look closer at the interaction of chemistry in this hovering fluid, dropping an effervescent medicine tablet into a floating water droplet yields an explosive masterpiece. The moment the chalky disc breaches the surface of the trembling sphere, the chemical reaction instantly begins releasing tiny pockets of carbon dioxide. However, without buoyancy to pull those gaseous bubbles to the top, they are permanently trapped, multiplying rapidly right inside the liquid core. The hovering globe begins to fizz violently from the inside out, swelling as the internal gas pressure desperately seeks an avenue of escape. Dozens of tiny, erratic blisters form on the outer skin of the sphere, expanding until the delicate surface tension finally gives way. Instead of a messy explosion, the water erupts gracefully, ejecting tiny, perfectly round droplets of foam in every conceivable direction. This micro-eruption looks like a slow-motion fireworks display, casting tiny, effervescent satellites out into the cabin's atmosphere. The core droplet writhes and dances, continually changing shape as the dissolving tablet hollows it out from the centre. It is a stunning, volatile sculpture of water and gas, living a chaotic, brief life before scattering into a fine, floating mist. Securing a morning dose of caffeine requires an entirely new approach to the basic geometry of drinking vessels. A traditional mug is utterly useless when the hot liquid inside refuses to pour, preferring instead to stick stubbornly to the bottom of the ceramic. To successfully sip a hot beverage, engineers had to completely reimagine the cup, utilising the very surface tension that holds the fluids captive. Specially designed capillary cups feature a sharp, carefully calculated crease that runs from the bottom reservoir all the way up to the lip. When the liquid touches this tight internal angle, microscopic forces naturally pull the fluid upward along the fold, defying the lack of mass and weight. The coffee essentially climbs up the side of the cup on its own, pooling exactly at the rim where it can be comfortably consumed. Watching the dark, steaming brew seemingly crawl up the plastic wall feels like witnessing a subtle, everyday magic trick. The drinker does not tip the cup back, but merely touches their lips to the gathered fluid, drawing it away without breaking the delicate vertical column. It is an elegant, highly engineered solution that perfectly manipulates orbital physics to preserve the simple psychological comfort of a morning routine. Picture a globe of brightly coloured fruit juice released deliberately into the centre of a module, left to drift like a tiny liquid planet. As it slowly spins through the pressurised air, the perfectly smooth outer curve of the sphere acts exactly like a highly polished convex mirror. The entire interior of the spacecraft, from the glowing computer screens to the bundled cables, is perfectly captured and distorted across the curved surface. Looking deeply into the hovering beverage, One can see a miniature warped reflection of the entire crew floating silently in the background. The liquid lens bends the ambient light with flawless optical precision, gathering the sprawling laboratory into a single trembling bead of vibrant colour. Because the fluid is perfectly stable and free from the chaotic ripples of a container, the reflection remains incredibly sharp and vivid. As the sphere traverses the room, the miniature world trapped within its skin rolls and shifts, mirroring the passing light fixtures and dark windows. It is a fleeting, edible piece of art that perfectly encapsulates the high-tech isolation of the environment. The simple drink becomes a mesmerizing, panoramic-looking glass, holding a tiny, upside-down universe within its sticky bounds. Take a gentle breath and notice the steady, reliable weight of the air resting against your shoulders, a sensation entirely missing when floating amidst these captivating liquid jewels. The simplest and most joyful method of hydration completely bypasses the need for intricate cups or specialized plastic pouches. A crew member can simply squeeze a thick stream of water from a dispenser, severing the liquid tail with a quick flick of the wrist. The resulting blob of pure hydration is left hovering mid-air, a shimmering target waiting patiently to be intercepted. Slowly gliding across the cabin, the person carefully lines up their approach, opening their mouth to swallow the drifting anomaly whole. The moment the water makes contact with the lips, the structural integrity of the sphere collapses, snapping violently against the palate as surface tension is finally broken. It is a deeply satisfying, entirely surreal way to quench a thirst, transforming a mundane biological necessity into a slow-motion game of aquatic interception. This playful interaction with sustenance provides a brief, brilliant flash of childlike wonder in an otherwise highly regimented workday. The absolute freedom to play with one's food, quite literally plucking it out of the thin air, offers a profound psychological release from the stress of isolation. Catching a hovering sphere of cool water is a vivid, daily reminder of the magical, rule-breaking reality they have temporarily chosen to inhabit. Far beyond the realm of simple hydration, the scientific blending of antagonistic liquids reveals capabilities that are chemically impossible below. For centuries, the adage that oil and water refuse to mix has been a foundational truth of fluid dynamics, driven entirely by the different weights of the two substances pulling them apart into distinct, separated layers. Remove that gravitational sorting mechanism, and these bitter chemical rivals can be coaxed into an unprecedented, harmonious union. When vigorously shaken together in a sealed tube, the two distinct liquids fracture into microscopic droplets that interlock in a perfectly stable matrix. Because neither fluid is being pulled downward or pushed upward, the resulting emulsion remains perfectly suspended indefinitely, without sorting itself out. They form a cloudy, uniform mixture that refuses to separate, creating a brand new hybridized texture that simply cannot naturally exist under the crushing weight of the atmosphere. This unique orbital phenomenon allows researchers to synthesize highly advanced pharmaceuticals, stronger metals, and purer cosmetics. The sheer ability to suspend different elements together without them eventually settling out unlocks a completely new frontier of material science. The floating laboratory transforms into an alchemical sanctuary, smoothly blending the unblendable into perfect, lasting equilibrium. This strange fluid behavior turns rigorous physical exercise into a uniquely sticky and unyielding challenge for the human body. As the core temperature rises during a strenuous workout on the stationary bicycle, the skin naturally begins to exude moisture to cool the system down. However, without gravity to pull the perspiration downward, the sweat cannot bead up and dramatically roll off the forehead or chest. Instead, the expelled moisture aggressively accumulates, building up a progressively thicker, clinging sheet of water right on top of the skin. As the workout intensifies, the athlete becomes covered in an unbroken gelatinous layer of their own perspiration that stubbornly refuses to fall away. It creates a suffocating, aquatic sensation, as the heavy water simply pools around the neck and spreads densely across the back. The only way to find relief from this clinging swamp is to continuously and aggressively wipe the body down with highly absorbent towels. The natural cooling mechanism of evaporation is severely hindered because the thick layer of fluid blocks the pores from breathing freely into the air. Exercising in the cosmos means constantly battling a rising tide of your own making, trapped within a heavy, invisible wetsuit of sticky moisture. Let your spine sink just a fraction deeper into its resting place, feeling the reliable comfort of an environment where a simple breeze can easily sweep away the moisture from your brow. To truly appreciate the delicate architecture of these weightless fluids, one only needs to witness the slow injection of a single drop of colourful dye. When a needle pierces a hovering water sphere and releases a burst of vibrant red or deep blue, the colour does not wildly churn or immediately dilute into a hazy cloud. Free from thermal currents and the pull of mass, the dye gracefully expands outward from the exact centre of the globe. The pigment unfurls in a state of perfect, absolute three-dimensional symmetry, blooming like a complex slow-motion flower captured in transparent amber. Microscopic tendrils of colour shoot perfectly outward, branching and curling in mathematical fractals that are entirely uninterrupted by the chaotic turbulence found in normal, terrestrial water. It is a flawless, spherical explosion that takes several mesmerizing minutes to fully saturate the host droplet. Observing this immaculate dye bloom is akin to watching a tiny silent nebula forming right in the middle of a room. The intricate tendrils map out the hidden currents of the water with breathtaking clarity, turning a simple physics demonstration into high art. It is the perfect, quiet culmination of the dance of fluids, an exquisite display of colour and geometry completely unbound by the heavy chains of the ground. Unbound by those heavy chains, the very concept of seeking out a horizontal bed becomes wonderfully obsolete when it is time to rest. The sleep stations on the orbital outpost look far more like vertical lockers than traditional sprawling bedrooms. Crew members slide into heavily fleece-lined sleeping bags that are rigidly strapped to the pale metallic walls. Because the inner ear cannot logically dictate up from down, sleeping vertically against a cold bulkhead feels completely identical to lying flat on a luxurious mattress. Once the heavy eyelids finally close, the orientation of the surrounding room completely vanishes from the conscious mind. A sleeping astronaut becomes just a quiet consciousness suspended in the dark, entirely untethered from the architectural layout of the laboratory. Stepping into this vertical cocoon requires a deep psychological surrender to the surrounding endless void. Strapping the heavy fabric tight prevents the sleeper from slowly ricocheting around the pressurized module like a dormant drifting satellite. It provides the crucial tactile illusion of being safely anchored, even as they hurl silently through the cosmos at impossible speeds. Surprisingly, the deep relaxation of the muscular system creates a bizarre visual phenomenon if the arms are left entirely unsecured. In the absolute depths of the night, a completely relaxed limb will naturally levitate away from the torso as the body seeks its fundamental resting equilibrium. To a passing crewmate, a sleeper without restraints looks exactly like a silent phantom, with both arms hovering steadily at shoulder height. To counteract this eerie levitation, the specialized sleeping bags are equipped with dedicated Velcro straps and tight, restrictive sleeves. Tucking the arms away is not merely for comfort, but to rigorously ensure that wandering hands do not inadvertently bump against a fragile switch. The methodical act of swaddling oneself becomes a deeply comforting nocturnal ritual, mimicking the tight, secure embrace of a heavy winter blanket. Securing the physical body in this deliberate way guarantees an uninterrupted, peaceful journey into the subconscious mind. The gentle tension of the fabric stretched across the chest and arms perfectly substitutes for the familiar lost weight of terrestrial living. It is a necessary mechanical hug that tightly tethers the physical form while the mind wanders freely into the infinite dark. Deep within the circadian rhythms of the crew, a subtle biological shift occurs when the constant fatigue of carrying one's own weight is completely removed. Throughout a terrestrial lifetime, sheer mass inflicts a relentless microscopic toll on the bones and deep supportive tissues, requiring hours of slumber to fully repair. In the floating sanctuary of the laboratory, that baseline physical exhaustion simply never accumulates within the cellular structure. The human body expends only a tiny fraction of its normal energy navigating the day, leaving the internal battery surprisingly full when evening finally arrives. Consequently, space travelers frequently discover that their biological demand for rest drops dramatically in the high frontier. Many awaken naturally and feel incredibly revitalized after only 5 or 6 hours of continuous silent slumber. The heavy, lingering grogginess that frequently plagues planetary mornings is often entirely absent from their waking experience. This reduction in the biological necessity for sleep grants the crew more precious, quiet moments in the darkness of the station. It is as if the human vessel becomes remarkably more efficient when permanently unplugged from the massive rock below. As your own breathing deepens, feel the heavy, comforting pull of the room holding you securely in place, a profound luxury entirely unknown to the drifting stars. This weightless environment unexpectedly cures one of humanity's most common and disruptive nocturnal ailments without any medical intervention. The loud phenomenon of snoring is almost entirely driven by the downward sag of relaxed soft tissues, which partially block the airway and painfully vibrate. Stripped of that downward gravitational drag, the tongue and the soft palate remain perfectly suspended and completely clear of the respiratory tract. As a direct result, even the most notorious heavy snorers become entirely silent the moment they fall asleep in orbit. The enclosed sleeping quarters remain wrapped in a library-like quiet, perfectly undisturbed by the guttural symphony of obstructed breathing. The respiratory system functions flawlessly and silently, pulling in the ambient atmosphere with absolutely zero anatomical resistance. Medical researchers consistently marvel at this sudden, spontaneous cessation of sleep apnea in their highly monitored orbiting subjects. The pristine, unbroken silence of an astronaut's breath highlights how deeply our physical struggles are dictated by the simple physics of mass. Sleep in the high frontier transforms into a profoundly quiet, perfectly unhindered biological rhythm. Transitioning into this silent slumber requires a completely new psychological approach to the very concept of getting comfortable at the end of the day. For decades, the human brain tightly associates the physical cue of lying down on a firm, supportive surface as the primary trigger for sleep. The tactile sensation pressing against the spine and hips signals the nervous system that the day's labour is officially concluded. In the endless freefall of the space station, that vital sensory trigger simply does not physically exist. To successfully drift off, an astronaut must consciously learn to manually power down their consciousness through sheer mental discipline. They cannot rely on the physical relief of taking a load off their feet, because that crushing load has been blissfully absent all day long. Falling asleep becomes an exercise in intense, focused meditation, deliberately quieting the mind without the comforting feedback of a soft bed. The traveller must mentally construct their own internal sense of heavy, dragging tranquility. The ability to surrender to sleep becomes a purely cognitive skill, mastered entirely within the quiet architecture of the mind. The quiet, continuous hum of ventilation fans in the sleep station is not just for ambient noise, but an absolutely vital mechanism for nocturnal survival. Without the natural thermal convection that causes warm air to rise, the invisible gases inside the pressurized module remain dangerously stagnant. When a resting astronaut exhales, the warm carbon dioxide simply hovers directly over their face, permanently trapped by the lack of atmospheric buoyancy. Left completely undisturbed, this toxic gas would quickly form an invisible, suffocating bubble, entirely enclosing the sleeper's head. To actively disperse this lethal pocket of exhalation, small dedicated fans must operate relentlessly beside every single sleeping bag. These mechanical guardians push a gentle, continuous breeze across the face, physically sweeping the toxic carbon dioxide out into the broader cabin scrubbers, If a sudden power failure were to silence these vital fans, the crew would quickly wake up gasping for breath, suffering from dangerous oxygen deprivation. The persistent rushing whisper of the ventilation system is a constant reminder of how incredibly fragile human life is in the vacuum. It is the mechanical breath of the station actively keeping its deeply dreaming inhabitants safe. Let the steady rhythm of your own chest rising and falling anchor you to the safety of your room, surrounded by air that moves freely and naturally. Piercing the veil of this engineered sleep, the first moments of morning consciousness bring a brief dizzying shock to the sensory system. Opening the eyes in a pitch-black vertical sleeping bag temporarily short-circuits the newly awakened groggy brain. For a terrifying fraction of a second, the mind vividly hallucinates that it is plummeting down an endless shaft, sparking a sudden sharp spike of adrenaline. The fluid in the inner ear screams that the physical body is in absolute freefall, a primal fear hardwired into our ancient ancestry. This intense disorientation lasts only until the higher cognitive functions fully boot up and violently override the primitive lingering panic. The eyes quickly locate the small glowing indicator lights of the sleep station, completely restoring a sense of spatial geometry and calm reality. The terrifying sensation of plunging instantly transforms back into the incredibly plush, supportive comfort of endless floating. Seasoned veterans learn to expect this daily jolt, accepting it as the unique psychological toll of waking up completely detached from the ground. Morning arrives not with the heavy groan of joints, but with the sudden, thrilling realization of perpetual flight. During the deepest phases of rapid eye movement, the subconscious mind actively processes and replicates this thrilling realization of flight. Back on the planetary surface, dreams of soaring through the sky are often startling, surreal anomalies that feel entirely detached from waking life. For an orbital resident, flying is simply the mundane reality of their daily, entirely frictionless commute from the laboratory to the galley. The dreaming brain simply integrates this new physical paradigm, constructing vivid nocturnal narratives built entirely around the absolute mechanics of levitation. Astronauts frequently report that their deeply immersive dreams involve effortlessly gliding through endless metallic tunnels or swimming through the ambient air of strange landscapes. The heavy, sluggish feeling of running through deep molasses is completely replaced by frictionless, multi-directional soaring. Their sleeping minds beautifully mirror the sheer kinetic freedom they experience during their brightly illuminated waking hours. Even the architecture of their dreams structurally shifts, abandoning flat floors and tight staircases for complex spaces without a defined up or down. The profound plasticity of the human brain allows it to completely rewrite its internal physics engine, dreaming like birds perfectly adapted to the boundless sky. Leaving this avian dreamscape behind, the physical transition from deep slumber to the active workday requires virtually zero muscular exertion. The grueling morning ritual of peeling oneself out from under heavy blankets and forcing the tired knees to bear weight is entirely abolished. An astronaut simply unzips the long seam of their tight sleeping bag and allows their completely relaxed body to gently drift forward. Navigation immediately commences with nothing more than the incredibly gentle tap of a single index finger against the nearby bulkhead. That minuscule transfer of kinetic energy is more than enough to propel the human frame silently down the corridor toward the glowing hygiene station. The morning commute is a slow, deeply majestic glide, completely devoid of the jarring impact of heavy footsteps. This frictionless awakening preserves a deep, lingering sense of total calm well into the busy, scheduled morning routine. The biological body does not have to psych itself up to fight a crushing planetary mass, allowing the mind to remain completely focused and serene. It is an incredibly peaceful, quiet transition from the floating dark directly into the highly technical workday. Notice how the simple gravity holding your shoulders down right now provides a profound sense of rootedness, a luxury of mass that solidly anchors you to the waking world. Ultimately, the entire complex architecture of this orbital slumber succeeds beautifully because it eliminates the greatest enemy of restful sleep entirely. Down below, the massive weight of the human frame compresses the skin and muscles against the mattress, inevitably pinching off microscopic blood vessels over time. This creates localized pain and numbness, forcing the sleeping body to unconsciously toss, turn, and roll over dozens of times a night just to restore healthy circulation. Suspended perfectly in the silent void, those irritating pressure points simply cannot physically exist. Every single square inch of the soft skin experiences exactly the same absolute lack of resistance, allowing warm blood to flow evenly and perfectly without interruption. A sleeper can remain in the exact same pristine, motionless posture for 8 continuous hours without ever feeling a single ache. The restless nocturnal tossing is entirely cured by the unique levitating physics of the isolated environment. The physical body remains perfectly still, wrapped safely in a cocoon of absolute equilibrium until the loud ventilation fans gently stir them awake. It is the purest, most biologically undisturbed form of physical hibernation humanity has ever successfully achieved. Emerging from that state of undisturbed hibernation, the waking astronaut discovers a world where the very definition of strength is completely rewritten. On the heavy surface of a planet, moving a massive 2-ton container would require industrial machinery or a small army of straining workers. In the weightless corridors of an orbital station, however, the same colossal mass can be navigated through the air with nothing more than a gentle, single-handed nudge. Watching a single person guide a massive scientific rack through a narrow hatch is like witnessing a silent aquatic ballet of industrial proportions. The sheer ease of this labour allows the body to remain in a state of perpetual physical calm, even when performing tasks that would be impossible elsewhere. It is a profound liberation from the heavy toil of existence, where the mightiest burdens are moved with the grace of a floating feather. This Newtonian purity means that a traveller can simply push off from one end of a 20-metre module and drift in total silence to the other. They become a self-propelled projectile, gliding through the sterile air with a clarity of motion that is impossible to achieve within a planetary atmosphere. It is a deeply meditative experience, surrendering the body to a trajectory that remains true until a hand reaches out to intervene. Navigating this way requires a forward-thinking mind that calculates every drift and every arrival seconds before they actually occur. The traveller must trust the stillness of the air and the consistency of their own initial force to carry them safely to their destination. In this environment, the simple act of travelling from point to point becomes a lesson in the beautiful, silent persistence of motion. If we were to look closer at the mechanics of this orbital commute, we would see that bouncing off the walls is the primary method of high-speed navigation. A seasoned traveller uses the pale, padded surfaces of the modules as a series of launch pads, redirecting their path with the lightest metallic tap of a toe. This rhythmic contact creates a soft, percussive soundscape that echoes through the station, signalling the movement of the crew. The feet, no longer required for standing, become sensitive rudders that interpret the texture and angle of every surface they brush against. A quick, precise flick of the ankle provides exactly enough torque to bank around a corner or dive through a circular hatch. It is a form of locomotion that feels remarkably more like flying through a dense forest than walking down a standard hallway. This tactile interaction with the architecture transforms the station from a series of rooms into a single, interconnected playground for the human form. Every handrail and bulkhead becomes an opportunity for a new vector, a new direction in the endless freefall of the day. The body learns to anticipate these soft impacts, using them to weave a complex three-dimensional tapestry of movement. Take a moment to feel the weight of your own body pressing into your chair, a constant reminder of the gravity that ensures nothing ever stays where you put it. In the weightless sanctuary of the station, the stressful clatter of a dropped tool or a fumbled pen is entirely and permanently erased from the sensory experience. If a screwdriver slips from a technician's grasp, it does not plummet to the ground to be lost. It simply hangs there, suspended in time. The object remains exactly where it was released, hovering in the air like a localized glitch in reality. This allows for a workspace that is fundamentally more organized and serene, as a dozen different instruments can be left floating within arm's reach. The astronaut works surrounded by a shimmering cloud of floating equipment, each piece waiting patiently in its assigned coordinate of empty space. However, this convenience requires a new type of vigilance, as the slightest air current from a ventilation fan can slowly spirit a tool away. A technician might look up from their work only to find their favourite wrench has drifted 3 meters toward the ceiling while their back was turned. Even in this state of suspended grace, the universe demands a gentle, constant awareness of where your possessions have chosen to wander. This structure of effortless action extends even to the most sedentary tasks, such as composing a digital log or analysing scientific data. On Earth, the weight of the hands resting on a keyboard provides a natural anchor that keeps the body stable during work. In microgravity, the simple physical force of pressing a single key creates an equal and opposite reaction that would slowly propel a typist backward. To remain stationary at a computer terminal, an astronaut must slip their feet into soft fabric loops or hook their toes under strategically placed blue handrails. These anchors provide the necessary leverage to counteract the tiny, repetitive thrusts of the fingertips against the keys. Without this physical tethering, the act of typing would turn into a slow, unintended departure from the workstation. Workstations are thus designed for a body that is perpetually trying to drift away from its responsibilities. The typist floats in a neutral crouch, their lower body securely fastened while their torso and arms remain completely free to move in the air. It is a unique ergonomic arrangement that allows for hours of productive focus without a single muscle in the neck or back becoming tired. Notice how the movements of a veteran spacefarer differ profoundly from the frantic, flailing energy of a newly arrived rookie. Beginners often attempt to move as if they are still on the ground, kicking their legs and swimming through the air with broad strokes that accomplish very little. They struggle against the lack of resistance, their limbs moving in a chaotic tangle that only succeeds in making them tumble. In contrast, the seasoned astronaut moves with a quiet, aquatic grace that is almost hypnotic to observe. They realize that in a world without weight, the smallest movement is the most effective, using only their fingertips and toes to guide their path. Their bodies remain long and relaxed, drifting through the hatches with the fluid economy of a deep-sea creature. This evolution of movement reflects a deep internal acceptance of the new physical laws governing their existence. They no longer fight the void, they cooperate with it, allowing the air and the architecture to dictate the rhythm of their day. It is a transition from terrestrial struggle to cosmic fluency, a masterclass in the beauty of doing less to achieve more. This cosmic interaction demands a sophisticated level of coordination for even the most basic human interactions, such as a simple, celebratory high five. On a planet, the friction of your shoes on the floor absorbs the impact of such a gesture, keeping both participants firmly in place. In the center of a weightless module, however, hitting someone else's hand creates a sudden, explosive transfer of kinetic energy. Unless the two people are properly anchored, a firm high five will send both of them tumbling backward in opposite directions, spinning slowly through the air. What should be a quick moment of camaraderie often turns into a complex physics problem, involving unintended torque and multi-axis rotation. The crew must learn to synchronize their movements, perhaps grabbing a nearby handhold before initiating the greeting. This creates a culture of physical mindfulness where every touch and every interaction is performed with deliberate care. Even a gentle pat on the shoulder requires the giver to compensate for the force, ensuring they don't accidentally push their friend across the room. It is a social environment built on the constant, silent awareness of how we are all physically connected in the dark. Let your mind drift into the sensation of your own limbs resting heavily, knowing that every movement you make is anchored by the solid world around you. Within the vast, open volumes of the station, gymnastic feats that would take years of training on the ground are performed with the slightest flick of a wrist. An astronaut can initiate a triple backflip or a complex corkscrewing spin by simply pushing off a wall at a slight calculated angle. This ability to tumble through the air without fear of falling creates a sense of profound, childlike joy among the crew. They often use their downtime to experiment with new ways of twisting and turning, discovering the limits of what the human form can do when weight is removed. It is a playground of pure physics, where every person is an elite athlete capable of defying the very laws of the old world. The traditional concept of footwear has been entirely abandoned in favour of thick, comfortable socks that serve a much more specialised purpose in the weightless environment. Footwear designed for the ground is built to support arches and cushion the impact of heavy steps, features that are useless when one never actually touches a floor. In space, shoes are replaced by fabric that reflects the fact that astronauts use the tops of their toes to anchor themselves. The skin of the feet becomes incredibly soft, as it no longer needs to produce the thick calluses required for terrestrial walking. Walking on the station is not done with the soles, but with a series of gentle, prehensile grasps using the entire foot. These socks often feature specialised rubber grips on the tops to help the wearer secure themselves to the blue handrails that line every module. Wearing only socks also protects the delicate scientific equipment and internal linings of the station from the scuffs and dirt of hard soles. It contributes to the overall quiet of the environment, ensuring that the tap of a foot against a wall is a soft, muffled sound. The feet are liberated from their heavy leather prisons, becoming sensitive, tactile tools that help the body navigate the three-dimensional maze. Deep within the neurological pathways of the long-term traveller, the brain undergoes a radical reconfiguration of its internal map of the world. On a planet, we perceive our surroundings in a largely two-dimensional way, focused on the flat surfaces we walk upon and the ceilings we cannot reach. In the weightless station, the brain is forced to abandon the concept of a floor and replace it with a fully three-dimensional volume. Every square inch of wall, ceiling and bulkhead is treated as a potential path or a storage location, expanding the usable living space by 300%. Over time, the astronaut stops thinking in terms of left and right or up and down, and instead begins to navigate by relative coordinates. They can move through the complex, twisting modules in total darkness, their mind having mapped every handhold and hatch as a series of vectors. This neuroplasticity is a testament to the incredible adaptability of the human mind when faced with a brand new reality. The traveller no longer sees a room. They see a potential for motion in every direction simultaneously. It is the final, profound achievement of effortless propulsion. A mind that has finally and completely learned how to live, think, and dream in the infinite. As the human mind learns to live, think, and dream in the infinite, the most basic botanical instincts are cast into a state of beautiful and quiet disorientation. Beneath the surface of the soil in a growth chamber, plant roots behave like lost explorers wandering through a dark, weightless forest. Without the downward pull of gravity to guide them toward water and nutrients, they grow in completely random, twisting directions. Scientists must provide strict light and moisture gradients to coax these confused organisms into a recognizable structure. It is a stunning visual representation of how fundamental the heavy hand of a planet is to the development of life. Left to their own devices, these roots become a chaotic, three-dimensional tangle, seeking a destination that no longer exists in a specific direction. This subterranean rebellion highlights the hidden relationship between mass and biology. Even as the stems reach upward toward the artificial LEDs, the roots below map out a new, lawless geography. It is a silent reminder that every living thing must reinvent its internal compass to survive the weightless dark. Surprisingly, the universe occasionally allows for a burst of vibrant terrestrial colour to pierce through the sterile metallic environment of the station. the successful blooming of zinnia flowers in orbit marked a historic moment in the fusion of technology and biology. These hardy blossoms unfurl their petals in brilliant shades of orange and red, standing out like jewels against the grey conduits and white laboratory walls. Each petal is a small living miracle that has managed to navigate the complexities of fluid transport and light cycles in a weightless void. They do not just grow, they thrive, reaching toward the artificial light with a fierce, quiet determination. For the crew, these flowers are more than just a scientific experiment. They are a living bridge to the gardens and meadows of a world that feels incredibly far away. Watching a flower open in the silence of the station offers a sense of profound peace. The delicate architecture of the bloom remains perfectly symmetrical, unaffected by the lack of a traditional upright support. It is a splash of living energy that softens the hard edges of the machine. If we were to look closer at the world of eight-legged travellers, we would find a masterclass in behavioural recalibration. When spiders are first introduced to the weightless environment, their initial attempts at web construction are remarkably disorganised and chaotic. They struggle to find their bearings, spinning tangled, three-dimensional messes that bear no resemblance to the elegant traps found in terrestrial corners. However, after only a few days of persistent effort, these ancient architects undergo a profound internal shift. They successfully adapt to the lack of gravity, reverting to the creation of perfect symmetrical patterns that are virtually indistinguishable from their earthly counterparts. This transition suggests that the blueprint for order is deeply encoded in the very fabric of their nervous systems, transcending the physical laws of their birthplace. This adaptation proves that the drive for structure is as universal as the stars themselves. The spider does not need a flaw to understand the geometry of a circle. It simply waits for the mind to catch up to the new reality of the void. Notice how your own breath enters and leaves your lungs with effortless ease, while elsewhere in the modules, unseen life forms are becoming stronger. Deep within the microscopic crevices of the station's cooling systems and surfaces, bacteria undergo a transformation that is both fascinating and formidable. In the unique stresses of microgravity, these tiny organisms often form biofilms that are significantly thicker and more resilient than those grown on a planet's surface. They aggregate into dense, multi-layered colonies that can survive harsh cleaning protocols and environmental fluctuations. This heightened resistance makes the microscopic environment of a spacecraft a complex battlefield for environmental control systems. Scientists study these resilient structures to understand how life adapts to extreme isolation and high radiation environments. Shutterstock. It is a sobering reminder that while the larger human frame might feel fragile in the void, the smallest life forms are often busy fortifying their own miniature empires. They thrive in the stillness, turning the recycled air and water into a new kind of home. Their resilience is a quiet testament to the enduring power of the very small. This structure of weightlessness allows for a delicate architectural streamlining in the world of orbital botany. On a planet, plant stems must be thick and robust, reinforced with cellulose to support the heavy weight of their own leaves and fruit against the downward tug of gravity. In the floating environment of the station, that mechanical burden is entirely removed from the plant's biological to-do list. Stems become significantly thinner and more flexible, as they no longer need to act as load-bearing pillars for the organism. They simply act as elegant conduits for water and nutrients, winding through the air with a fragility that would be fatal in a terrestrial garden. This reduction in structural mass allows the plant to redirect its precious energy toward faster leaf growth and more efficient photosynthesis. The result is a plant that looks almost ethereal, as if it were made of green light and glass. It sways gently in the cabin's ventilation currents, unburdened by the requirements of mass. It is a biological expression of the same effortless propulsion that carries the astronauts through the halls. Observing a delicate lettuce leaf sprout slowly unfurl in the centre of a growth chamber offers a profound reminder of life's fierce and unyielding adaptability. The seedling emerges from its seed coat with a quiet confidence, its pale green tissues reaching out into a world without a floor or ceiling. It navigates the complex dance of gas exchange and liquid absorption with a precision that seems almost intelligent. Even without the traditional cues of the ground, the sprout finds its way toward the light, optimizing its surface area to catch every photon. This tiny edible plant represents the future of deep space exploration, proving that we can carry our life-sustaining ecosystems into the farthest reaches of the dark. It is a fragile yet powerful symbol of the green pulse that continues to beat even in the heart of the most inhospitable machine. This simple sprout is a promise of sustenance and survival. It turns the sterile environment into a nursery for the future of the human spirit. In its tiny leaves, we see the blueprint for a home among the stars. As your heart beats in a slow, steady rhythm, consider the incredible endurance of creatures that can survive where no human could ever go. Beyond the pressurized walls of the modules, in the absolute vacuum and blistering radiation of the open void, a truly alien resilience is on full display. Microscopic water bears, known as tardigrades, have demonstrated the nearly impossible ability to survive exposure to the raw environment of space. When subjected to the freezing temperatures and intense solar winds of the exterior station, they enter a state of deep, suspended animation called a tun. In this dormant form, they can survive for extended periods, only to be miraculously revived when brought back into a hospitable environment. Their survival challenges our very understanding of the limits of biological existence and the potential for life to travel between worlds. These tiny, armoured voyagers prove that the universe is not just a graveyard, but a vast highway for the most determined of passengers. They drift through the silence, waiting for the warmth to return. They are the ultimate survivors in a world that offers no mercy. Surprisingly, the unique laboratory conditions of orbit provide a window into the very secrets of human longevity and the passage of time. Scientific observations have revealed that the aging processes in certain immune cells appear to accelerate significantly while in a weightless state. This rapid progression offers researchers a unique opportunity to study the mechanisms of cellular decline in a highly compressed time frame. By observing how these cells weaken and change in the microgravity environment, we gain invaluable insights into the degenerative diseases that affect millions back on the surface. It is as if the absence of weight removes a veil, exposing the fundamental clocks that govern our biological destiny. This research transforms the station into a fountain of knowledge, where the speed of spaceflight helps us understand the slow, inevitable crawl of the years. In this environment, time seems to behave differently at the cellular level. We learn the language of decay and the secrets of repair in the absolute stillness of the laboratory. It is a journey toward the centre of ourselves, conducted far above the clouds. If we were to look into the shimmering aquatic tanks of the station's biology module, we would witness a hypnotic and rhythmic dance. Medica fish brought into the weightless environment must completely relearn the fundamental mechanics of swimming without the steady reference of a downward pull. Initially confused, they often begin to swim in tight repetitive loops, their scales catching the light like flickering silver coins. This circular motion is their way of generating a sense of orientation through sheer physical movement. Over time, these shimmering schools create a fluid, three-dimensional choreography that seems to defy the very concept of an ocean. They move through their watery world with a newfound freedom, exploring every corner of their environment in a way that their terrestrial ancestors could never have imagined. The tank becomes a sphere of silver and blue, a miniature world where every direction is open to exploration. The fish become a living kaleidoscope, their movements a silent celebration of the lack of limits. They have found a new way to be, within the quiet heart of the machine. Feel the steady, reliable weight of your limbs, a comfort that makes the simple act of breathing a quiet victory for life. Ultimately, the most profound biological marvel on the station is not found in a microscope, but in the simple, earthy smell of a damp growth chamber. Tending to a tiny orbital garden becomes a highly cherished and essential part of the crew's daily routine, providing a vital psychological anchor to the living world. The scent of fresh green leaves and moist soil offers a sensory escape from the metallic, recycled atmosphere of the modules. This quiet interaction with growing things provides a deep sense of purpose and a tangible connection to the cycle of life that continues back on the home planet. For a few minutes each day, the astronaut is no longer just a technician or a pilot, but a gardener nurturing a fragile green hope in the middle of a desert of stars. It is the final, beautiful realization that no matter how far we travel into the infinite, we always carry the quiet heartbeat of the Earth within us. The garden is a sanctuary of oxygen and memory. It is where the traveller finds the strength to continue the journey. The spherical fire sensory focus, the soft, dim blue glow of a perfectly round, silent flame. The journey continues through the sanctuary of oxygen, yet that very life-giving gas behaves with a surreal, geometric grace when ignited in the absence of weight. On the planetary surface, heat causes air to expand and rise, pulling cooler oxygen into the base of a flame and creating the familiar flickering teardrop shape. In the absolute stillness of an orbital laboratory, this process of thermal buoyancy simply does not exist. Without convection to draw hot air upward, the fire cannot stretch toward a non-existent ceiling. Instead, it pulls oxygen toward itself from every direction simultaneously, resulting in a flame that is a perfect stationary sphere. It hangs in the air like a tiny glowing planet of pure energy, entirely devoid of the chaotic dancing or spitting common to terrestrial campfires. Observing this immaculate orb provides a profound sense of visual order amidst the high-tech clutter of the station. The flame remains so still that it appears more like a solid object than a chemical reaction. It is a quiet, rounded testament to the hidden symmetries of physics when the heavy hand of gravity is finally removed. This blue-rimmed marble of fire offers a glimpse into a world where elements are freed from their earthly burdens. Surprisingly, the familiar warm yellow glow that has defined human fire for millennia vanishes entirely in the heart of the weightless void. On the ground, that yellow hue is caused by tiny soot particles that are carried upward by rising air and heated until they glow like incandescent embers. In the microgravity environment, these carbon fragments are never lifted away from the combustion zone to reach those radiant temperatures. The colour of an orbital flame shifts into a haunting, translucent blue that reflects the raw chemical reaction of oxygen meeting fuel. This cerulean light is remarkably soft, casting a dim, oceanic glow against the metallic surfaces of the research module. It looks like a fragment of a captured star or a phantom light found in the deep sea, stripped of the smoky, jagged intensity of a fireplace. Deep within this blue light, the very pace of existence seems to slow down into a quiet, almost meditative rhythm. Because oxygen can only reach the centre of the flame through the slow, gentle process of molecular diffusion, the fire burns at a fraction of its normal speed. It does not crackle or roar, but instead persists with a steady, unhurried intensity that feels remarkably peaceful to observe. This leisurely pace allows the combustion to be incredibly efficient, consuming every molecule of fuel with a precision that is impossible to achieve in a turbulent terrestrial environment. The energy is released in a smooth, continuous wave, rather than the erratic bursts of a typical candle. It is an exercise in thermodynamic patience, a fire that takes its time to breathe and exist in the stillness. Scientists find this slow-motion burn fascinating because it allows them to study the chemical interactions in minute detail. For the crew, watching the blue sphere offers a rare moment of stillness in a day governed by high-speed orbits and complex schedules. It is a reminder that even the most volatile forces of nature can find a state of serene equilibrium when weight is cast aside. If we were to look closer at the invisible margins of these experiments, we might discover the ghostly presence of cool flames. These are extraordinary chemical phenomena where the fuel continues to react with oxygen, at temperatures far below the threshold of visible light. To the naked eye, the fire appears to have gone out, yet the reaction persists in a dark, silent state that produces heat and chemical byproducts. These flames drift through the test chambers like invisible spirits, detectable only by specialized infrared sensors that map their low-intensity heat signatures. They represent a state of matter that is virtually impossible to maintain on the ground due to the disruptive forces of convection. In the weightless dark, they can linger for long periods, creating a strange dual existence of fire and shadow. Understand that your own body, resting now, is also a site of slow, invisible combustion as you turn air into energy. In orbit, fire mimics this biological subtlety, burning with a temperature so mild it would not even char a piece of paper. It is a subtle, haunting mystery of orbital physics that continues to challenge our most basic definitions of heat and light. Take a gentle breath and feel the reliable weight of your lungs settling into your chest as you consider the extreme delicacy of life in the void. Extinguishing one of these serene spherical flames requires a surprisingly soft touch, far removed from the aggressive smothering needed on Earth. Because the fire relies on a fragile, balanced supply of oxygen from the surrounding air, a single, gentle puff of breath is often enough to disrupt the entire system. The sudden movement of air pushes the delicate reaction zone away from its fuel source, causing the blue orb to instantly dissolve into the atmosphere. It does not smoke or flare up as it dies, but simply vanishes like a soap bubble pricked by a needle. This extreme sensitivity highlights how precariously balanced the forces of microgravity are within the pressurized modules. The crew treats these flames with a unique reverence, knowing that their very existence is a product of absolute stillness. To end the light is an act of almost zero effort, yet it leaves the observer in a profound, sudden darkness. It is a quiet lesson in the power of the smallest intervention within a perfectly calibrated, weightless world. Picture a single droplet of liquid fuel suspended in the center of a high-tech combustion chamber, igniting into a tiny pulsing sun. Without a container to hold it, the liquid remains a perfect sphere, and as it burns, it shrinks with a hypnotic, concentric precision. The flame wraps around the fuel in a glowing blue shell, creating a miniature model of a celestial body in the midst of a violent transformation. As the fuel is consumed, the droplet may begin to pulse or vibrate, reacting to the internal pressures of vaporizing liquid. This rhythmic movement looks like the heartbeat of a tiny artificial star, flickering with a life force that is entirely self-contained. It is a spectacular visual metaphor for the birth and death of suns, played out in the span of a few seconds within a metal box. Eventually, as the last molecule of fuel is converted into energy, the mini-sun collapses in on itself with a final, silent flash. A thin, delicate wisp of smoke may linger for a moment before drifting away into the recycling vents. It is a brief, brilliant performance of energy and mass that leaves the observer in a state of quiet wonder and reflection. Imagine the careful and rigorous science required to conduct these experiments within the secure confines of a multi-layered glove box. Fire is one of the most feared hazards in any enclosed environment, yet its study is essential for understanding how matter behaves across the universe. Astronauts perform these tests behind thick panes of safety glass, using robotic interfaces and sealed airlocks to ensure the safety of the station. These chambers act as small, controlled universes where the laws of physics can be isolated and scrutinized with unparalleled clarity. Every variable, from the concentration of oxygen to the temperature of the igniter, is precisely monitored by high-speed cameras and sensors. This allows for a level of data collection that is simply unattainable in the turbulent, gravity-bound laboratories of our home planet. This high-stakes research provides the foundational knowledge needed for future missions to Mars and the outer planets. It is a blend of extreme caution and bold curiosity, turning the most dangerous element into a valuable teacher. By mastering the spherical fire, we prepare ourselves to carry the warmth of civilization safely into the deep, weightless dark. The absolute absence of flickering makes these spherical flames look almost solid, like glowing marbles of pure energy or polished sapphires hanging in the air. On Earth, we're accustomed to fire being a restless, shifting entity that constantly changes its shape and intensity. In microgravity, the fire achieves a state of such profound stability that it can appear completely motionless to the casual observer. This lack of movement is due to the perfect equilibrium between the fuel vapor moving outward and the oxygen diffusing inward. The flame front remains locked in a precise geometric position, creating a sharp, unwavering boundary between the burning core and the surrounding air. It is a vision of fire that is sculptural and permanent, rather than fleeting and chaotic. Looking into this frozen light is like peering through a window into a different dimension of time. The blue orb does not waver or spit. It simply exists in a state of continuous quiet being. This architectural stillness transforms the act of burning into something closer to an illuminated meditation on the nature of stability and light. This behavior means that smoke detectors on the station must be positioned and calibrated with extreme care to account for this non-directional movement. If a fire were to occur, the smoke would slowly fill the volume of the module from the center out, rather than collecting at the top. This creates a unique set of challenges for fire safety and air filtration in a weightless environment. Notice how your own body is supported by the surface beneath you, ensuring that you always know the orientation of your surroundings. In the high frontier, even the debris of a fire refuses to acknowledge the ground, drifting instead as a silent, expanding ghost of what once was. It is a final visual proof of the absolute impartiality of space and the laws of physics. Studying these serene and efficient fires has led to the design of much cleaner and greener combustion engines back on the surface of our home planet. By isolating the chemical processes from the interference of gravity, scientists have discovered new ways to reduce the production of soot and toxic emissions. The data gathered from a tiny blue sphere in orbit helps engineers optimize fuel injectors and piston heads for terrestrial vehicles. These orbital insights have paved the way for advanced lean burn technologies that use less fuel while producing significantly more power. We take the lessons of the weightless void and apply them to the machines that power our cities and transportation networks. It is a beautiful cycle of discovery, where the most remote laboratory in existence provides the solutions for a more sustainable future. The spherical fire is not just a scientific curiosity, but a catalyst for real-world change that benefits every living thing on Earth. It proves that by looking up and casting away the weight of our assumptions, we find the tools to heal our home. The journey of the flame comes full circle, lighting the way toward a cleaner, quieter, and more efficient world. Creativity in the cosmos' sensory focus, the soft scratch of a graphite pencil on thick textured paper. The quiet, creative heart of the station finds its voice in the soft strum of a guitar, yet even music must adapt to the laws of inertia. On a world bound by mass, the weight of an acoustic guitar keeps it resting securely against the musician's lap, its wood vibrating against the body. In the weightless void, the simple act of striking a chord would send the instrument drifting away, while the musician's torso tumbled in the opposite direction. Securing the instrument to the body with specialized straps is the only way to maintain the necessary physical connection between artist and wood. This creates an intimate, unified system where every vibration is felt directly through the chest and the skeletal structure. The melody resonates through the metallic hull, a familiar terrestrial sound finding a new, ethereal life in the silent vacuum. As the strings vibrate, they create a rhythmic pulse that echoes against the cooling pipes and scientific racks. It is a profound auditory bridge between the mechanical isolation of the station and the lush, resonant memories of the home world. Playing music in the dark becomes a ritual of anchoring the soul, ensuring that even in the infinite the human song remains steady and clear. Surprisingly, the same fluid dynamics that once governed scientific cooling systems now serve the whims of a weightless artist. Instead of dipping a brush into a palette, an astronaut can coax vibrant, shimmering spheres of coloured water to hover in the air before a floating canvas. By gently manipulating these liquid jewels with a steady hand, they can apply pigment in a way that is utterly impossible within a planetary atmosphere. The water behaves like a living sculptural medium, clinging to the surface through surface tension and building up in thick three-dimensional layers. These paintings capture a unique depth and luminosity, reflecting the multi-directional light of the cabin in ways no traditional oils ever could. Each stroke is a deliberate collaboration with the physics of the void, resulting in a masterpiece that truly belongs to the stars. The colours don't merely sit on the canvas, they seem to float within it, creating a textured landscape of light and shadow. Artists in orbit describe the process as a dance with the fluid, a slow-motion negotiation with a medium that refuses to be contained. This new form of expression turns the cold, metallic laboratory into a gallery of liquid light that shifts with the traveller's perspective. If we were to look closer at the simple act of recording thoughts, we would discover that the humble ballpoint pen is a specialised tool that fails completely without a downward pull. These pens rely on gravity to continuously draw thick, viscous ink from a reservoir down to the tiny rotating rollerball at the tip. In the freefall of orbit, the ink simply floats away from the roller, leaving the writer with a frustratingly dry and useless instrument. To capture their reflections, travellers must rely on pressurised cartridges or the soft scratch of a graphite pencil on thick, textured paper. The lid leaves its mark through physical friction alone, requiring no assistance from the pull of a planet to leave a lasting legacy. Every word written in a journal becomes a tactile record of a mind working in a world where even the ink refuses to fall. This reliance on a primitive tool like a pencil offers a strange, grounding comfort in a world defined by high-speed computers and complex wiring. The sound of lead on paper is one of the few sounds that remains unchanged across the centuries of human exploration. It is a quiet, persistent scratch that links the modern explorer to the ancient scholars who first mapped the movements of the stars. Take a moment to feel the solid resistance of the ground beneath you, a reliable anchor that ensures your pen always flows and your thoughts remain grounded. This structure of orbital physics even alters the quiet intimacy of reading a physical, paper-bound book during a rare moment of rest. On a world with weight, a book rests naturally in the hands, its pages staying neatly in place as the reader moves through the narrative. Without that downward force, the hundreds of thin, flexible sheets of paper begin to fan open into a chaotic, floating ruffle that obscures the text. Every single page must be secured with delicate clips or held down with a firm, constant grip to prevent the volume from expanding like a blossoming flower. The physical interaction with literature becomes a more active, deliberate process of containing a restless object. Yet, the smell of paper and the tactile snap of a turning page offer a grounding sensory experience that digital screens can never fully replicate. A reader in space often finds themselves floating in a fetal position, their book secured to their knees with a simple bungee cord. In the silence of the station, the turning of a page is a rhythmic, comforting sound that reminds the traveller of the weight of history. It is a quiet rebellion against the digital efficiency of the cosmos, a slow-motion dive into the human imagination. Photography in the high frontier becomes an exercise in extreme, calculated patience as the camera is stabilized against windows moving at 5 miles per second. While the interior of the station feels like a still, quiet sanctuary, the landscape below is a blur of hypervelocity motion. To capture a sharp, clear image of a specific city or mountain range, the photographer must match the rotation of the station with mechanical precision. They brace their bodies against the cold glass of the cupola, using their own breath and heartbeat as a rhythm for the shutter's release. The resulting images are masterpieces of timing, freezing a single brilliant moment of a planet that is constantly sliding away. It is a pursuit that demands total presence and a deep understanding of the invisible vectors that define orbital life. The photographer must anticipate the appearance of a landmark minutes before it arrives, calculating the angle of the sun and the drift of the clouds. When the shutter finally clicks, it captures more than just light. It captures the immense scale of a world seen from a godlike height. Each photograph is a silent trophy, a fragment of reality rescued from the incredible speed of the stars. Notice how the very acoustics of the modules shift and change based on the invisible pressures and the shifting inventory of cargo. The metallic halls act as a vast, complex resonator, where the sound of a human voice carries a different timbre depending on the density of the air and the arrangement of soft equipment bags. Singing in this environment reveals a delicate, ever-evolving resonance that would be impossible to find in a standard recording studio on the ground. The lack of thermal convection also changes the way sound waves travel through the air, creating a sonic environment that is remarkably clear and intimate. A single, pure note can linger in the module with a crystalline quality that seems to defy the mechanical hum of the fans. It is a unique, auditory signature of the station, a voice that changes its character as the mission progresses. Crew members often find that their own ears become more sensitive to the subtle shifts in frequency, learning to hear the health of the station's systems. The soundscape becomes a living entity, a constant companion in the profound silence of the surrounding void. It is the music of the machine, harmonizing with the heartbeat of the traveller in the deep dark. Let your own voice hum softly for a moment, feeling the resonance in your chest as it bounces off the familiar solid walls of your home. Surprisingly, the ancient art of paper folding reaches a state of impossible perfection when practiced in the absolute stillness of the void. Crafting origami in space results in perfectly crisp, sharp folds that will never sag, warp, or collapse under their own weight. On a planet, a complex paper crane might slowly lose its shape as the humidity and gravity pull at its delicate wings over time. In orbit, the geometry remains frozen in time, exactly as the artist intended it to be, creating a permanent sculpture out of the simplest materials. The paper feels lighter and more responsive to the touch, allowing for a level of intricate detail that is breathtaking to observe. These paper sculptures drift through the air like miniature geometric ghosts, silent witnesses to the human desire to create order. Watching a finished piece of origami float across the room is like seeing a mathematical equation given physical form. It moves with a purity of motion that is completely unhindered by the friction or the heaviness of the world below. For the artist, this act of creation is a way to leave a permanent mark on an environment that is constantly in flux. Deep within the quiet hours of a weekend, the rhythmic movement of knitting needles creates a surreal, aquatic visual in the centre of the cabin. While the clicking of the needles remains a familiar terrestrial sound, the yarn behaves with a mind of its own, floating in beautiful, chaotic loops around the artist. Without the weight of the garment pulling the stitches down, the growing fabric tends to bunch and drift in a three-dimensional tangle. The yarn must be carefully managed and periodically pulled tight to ensure the tension remains consistent across the entire work, a task that requires a delicate awareness. It looks as if the artist is weaving a web out of thin air, capturing the invisible currents of the ventilation system in a net of wool. This slow, tactile creation of clothing is a profound meditation on patience and the persistent human need to build warmth. As the needles move, they create a rhythmic, clicking heartbeat that fills the small module with a sense of familiar home. The resulting sweater or scarf is a tangible record of time spent in the dark, a soft piece of geometry carved out of the infinite. It is a wearable memory of the stillness, stitched together in the heart of a falling star. Observe the careful, architectural planning required to perform the simple, everyday task of making a sandwich in the galley. Below the atmospheric ceiling, ingredients rest atop one another in a stable, vertical stack held together by the simple force of gravity and friction. In the weightless station, a slice of bread released for a single second would immediately wander away, followed by the lettuce, the meat, and the cheese. To build a meal, the astronaut must use a dab of sticky mustard or thick honey as a biological glue to anchor each layer to the next. The sandwich is constructed in 3 dimensions, with every component meticulously bonded before the next is applied to the floating structure. It is a slow, methodical process that turns a simple snack into a minor engineering feat, requiring a steady hand and culinary adhesive. Eating the result is equally complex, as every bite must be managed to prevent crumbs from scattering into the sensitive electronics of the station. Yet, this careful construction is a ritual of normalcy, a way to reclaim the simple pleasure of a meal from the sterile efficiency of the cosmos. It is a tactile victory for the senses, built layer by sticky layer in the silence. As you sit in the quiet of your room, appreciate the simple, invisible force that keeps your coffee in its cup and your meal neatly on its plate. Finally, the simple act of juggling becomes a surreal, slow-motion ballet that gracefully and completely defies every rule of earthly physics. On a planet, a juggler is caught in a frantic rhythmic battle against the constant downward acceleration of falling objects. In the center of a weightless module, 3 spheres can be launched into the air, where they will drift in perfect, lazy arcs for as long as the artist desires. The hands move with a deliberate aquatic grace, gently guiding each object into a new trajectory rather than desperately catching it before it hits the floor. It is a vision of total control, where the objects seem to have lost all memory of falling and instead embrace the absolute freedom of the sky. This display is the ultimate expression of human creativity in the cosmos, a joyful, floating dance. The spheres move like tiny planets in a choreographed solar system, their paths crossing with a mathematical beauty as the traveller becomes a conductor of gravity itself. The act of juggling becomes a celebration of the weightless soul, found in the heart of the machine. It is the final, playful proof that we are limited only by our imagination, even in the infinite dark. This neurological flexibility turns the station into a multi-dimensional volume, where every surface is equally valid for standing, working, or resting. It is a profound psychological liberation, allowing the traveller to navigate the modules from angles that would feel impossible or dizzying back on the surface. The architecture of the station remains fixed and metallic, but the mind becomes a fluid observer, effortlessly reordering the cosmos to suit its immediate needs. In this state, a simple corridor becomes a tunnel of infinite possibilities, where the very floor beneath your feet is only a floor because you have chosen to believe in it. The mind's eye perceives a world without limits, a sanctuary of pure geometry, where every orientation offers a fresh perspective on the nature of space. It is the ultimate mental unbinding, a transition from a 2-dimensional existence to a 3-dimensional mastery of the void. Surprisingly, the same upward shift of fluids that reshapes the face also exerts a subtle, numbing influence over the human sense of taste and smell. Without gravity to pull fluids downward, the nasal passages become slightly congested, effectively muting the delicate nuances and aromatic complexities of most terrestrial flavours. To the spacefarer, even the most vibrant gourmet meals can begin to taste as bland as wet cardboard, leading to a strange and persistent culinary longing for home. To pierce through this sensory fog, astronauts become remarkably reliant on intense fiery spices and pungent condiments that can provoke a physical reaction. Bottles of ghost pepper sauce and tubes of concentrated wasabi become the most prized treasures in the galley, providing the sharp, chemical kick necessary to register on a dulled palate. Eating becomes less about the subtle interplay of ingredients and more about a bold, rhythmic strike of heat that reminds the traveller they are still connected to the vibrant sensations of biological life. This craving for intensity reflects the mind's desire to feel something sharp and grounded in an environment that is otherwise as soft and silent as dream. The galley becomes a laboratory of spice, where the heat of the earth is used to awaken a mind drifting through the cold silence of orbit. It is a sensory anchor, a way to reclaim the sharpness of existence from the soft, weightless haze. Deep within the absolute stillness of the sleeping quarters, a traveller might experience a startling phenomenon that reminds them of the raw radiation saturating the weightless void. Even with their eyelids tightly closed and the lights extinguished, brilliant, silent flashes of white light occasionally streak across their field of vision like phantom shooting stars. These are not hallucinations, but high-energy cosmic rays piercing through the station's specialized shielding and directly striking the optic nerve or the retina. These phosphins appear as tiny luminous explosions or electric blue streaks, providing a visual record of subatomic particles traveling at nearly the speed of light. It is a hauntingly beautiful experience that serves as a constant, quiet reminder of the invisible celestial winds blowing through the hull and the flesh alike. To see the stars even when your eyes are shut is to understand the true permeability of the human form in the vast, unprotected theatre of the universe. It is a moment where the boundary between the internal mind and the external cosmos dissolves into a single, radiant flash of light. The brain processes these high-energy intruders with a sense of quiet wonder, acknowledging the station's position as a thin shell of life in a radioactive sea. Each flash is a silent pulse of the universe, a microscopic event that links the observer to the deepest mysteries of the stars. Feel the weight of your eyes resting in their sockets, a steady darkness that knows no such cosmic interference, safely shielded by the thick air of your world. This structure of reality is further warped by the invisible laws of relativity, which dictate that time itself flows differently for those who dwell among the stars. Because the station is hurling through space at 18,000 miles per hour and sitting further from the Earth's massive gravitational well, the crew is subject to the subtle effects of time dilation. Over the course of a 6-month mission, the clock of an astronaut's body actually ticks slightly slower than the clocks of those remaining on the planet's surface. Although the difference is measured in mere milliseconds, it remains a profound scientific fact that a traveller returns to Earth having aged a fraction less than their peers. They have literally stepped outside the standard, linear stream of terrestrial time, becoming survivors of a future they reached by moving faster than the world below. It is a quiet, mathematical magic that underlines the deep connection between speed, mass, and the very fabric of human aging in the infinite dark. Each second spent in orbit is a tiny, silent theft from the bank of time, a gift of longevity earned through the sheer velocity of the journey. The mind must reconcile this shift, realizing that their very cells are keeping a rhythm that is slightly out of sync with the world they left behind. It is the ultimate expression of the unbinding of the mind, where even the passage of the years becomes a relative, weightless concept. If we were to look closer at the auditory environment of the station, we would find it dominated by the constant mechanical murmur of life support systems. The whirring of powerful ventilation fans and the rhythmic thrum of coolant pumps form a continuous tapestry of sound that never truly ceases. Over time, the human brain performs a remarkable feat of sensory filtration, eventually relegating this industrial roar to the back of the consciousness as a comforting, rhythmic white noise. It is the sound of life being manufactured in a place that was never meant to sustain it, a mechanical lullaby for the weightless soul. The silence of the void is kept at bay by this persistent metallic breath, creating a sanctuary of sound in the desert of space. In the stillness of the inner mind, this hum becomes a meditative pulse, a constant companion in the profound isolation of the journey. Notice how the fundamental concept of dropping an object is eventually erased from a spacefarer's muscle memory over the span of several quiet weeks. On Earth, we are hardwired to keep a firm, constant grip on our possessions, knowing that any lapse in attention will result in an immediate downward plunge toward the floor. In the weightless sanctuary of orbit, the brain slowly realizes that it no longer needs to exert this constant subconscious vigilance over the physical world. The fingers learn to let go of a heavy tool with the absolute certainty that it will remain exactly where it was placed, hovering in the air like a loyal, silent pet. This leads to a unique and often humorous disorientation upon returning home, where an astronaut might absent-mindedly release a glass of water in mid-air and simply walk away. The mind has been so thoroughly reconditioned by the laws of the void that it must painfully relearn the harsh, unforgiving physics of a world that demands a constant grip. It is a slow shedding of terrestrial anxiety, replaced by a quiet trust in a world where nothing ever falls. The very idea of an accident is redefined, as the fear of impact is replaced by the minor inconvenience of drift. This mental shift marks the final transition from a visitor to a true resident of the stars, a mind that has finally and completely accepted the stillness. Feel the simple, heavy pressure of the air against your skin, a reliable force that ensures your world remains exactly where you expect it to be. Picture the surreal sensation of releasing a heavy steel wrench and simply watching it hang motionless an inch from your face. Without weight to pull it down or air current strong enough to move it, the tool appears to be frozen in the very fabric of space-time. It possesses all of its terrestrial mass and potential force, yet it exhibits a degree of stillness that feels entirely unnatural to a mind born on the ground. To see a heavy object defy its own nature in this way is to experience a profound shift in one's understanding of what is possible. The wrench becomes a symbol of the traveller's own existence, a heavy thing rendered light, a fixed point in a world of constant high-speed motion. It is a visual meditation on the absolute neutrality of the vacuum, where the greatest weights and the lightest feathers share the same effortless hovering destiny. This stillness is not the absence of energy, but a perfect balance of forces that allows the object to simply be, unburdened by the need to arrive anywhere. The artificial light of the module glints off the polished steel, casting a steady, unchanging reflection that seems to mock the concept of time. It is a quiet, metallic ghost of an object, a testament to the fact that in the void, even the most utilitarian tools can become objects of profound, static beauty. This cognitive surplus, generated by the massive amount of physical energy normally spent fighting gravity to maintain posture, is often redirected into states of intense focus. On a planet, the brain is constantly processing millions of microsignals from the muscles and joints just to keep the skeletal structure upright and balanced. Once this gravitational tax is removed, the neural network finds itself with an unexpected and vibrant surplus of cognitive resources. Many astronauts report a heightened sense of mental clarity and a surge in creative problem-solving abilities while living in the weightless environment. This energy allows the inner mind to drift into deeper levels of contemplation and artistic expression, unburdened by the physical exhaustion of simply existing against a floor. The mind becomes a more powerful and efficient engine when it no longer has to carry the heavy weight of the flesh, soaring through the tasks of the day with an almost supernatural speed. It is a state of being where the thoughts move as freely as the body, unhindered by the friction of a heavy world. This mental agility allows for a unique kind of cosmic flow, where complex engineering problems are solved with the same intuitive ease as a child playing with blocks. The brain, liberated from its biological anchor, expands to fill the silence, turning the station into a vast intellectual playground where the light of reason burns with a steady, unblinking flame. Deep within the neural pathways, a radical rewiring occurs as the brain learns to trust the eyes over the unreliable and panicked signals of the inner ear. Because the vestibular system is in a state of permanent confusion without a gravitational anchor, the brain eventually decides to stop listening to its ancient balance sensors. It begins to rely solely on visual cues to determine orientation and movement, creating a brand new sensory hierarchy that is unique to the experience of orbit. This shift allows the traveller to perform complex manoeuvres and multi-axis rotations without the crippling motion sickness that would normally occur in a terrestrial simulator. The eyes alone dictate what is stable and what is moving, allowing the mind to construct a calm internal world amidst the chaotic tumble of the stars. It is a stunning display of human neuroplasticity, a mind that has literally learned to see its way into a state of perfect, weightless equilibrium. This internal stillness becomes the foundation of the spacefarer's reality, a quiet confidence that remains even when the world is spinning out of control. The brain has mastered the art of the multi-directional volume, ignoring the screams of the inner ear to find peace in the visual flow. It is the final biological adaptation to the void, a mind that has truly and completely unbound itself from the earth. Let your mind settle into the quiet stability of your own center, where every sense is in perfect agreement with the world around you. Returning to the world of weight requires a grueling and exhaustive relearning of the simple physics of mass and momentum. After months of effortless floating, the sudden reintroduction of gravity feels like being buried alive under a mountain of invisible heavy blankets. The simple act of holding a ceramic coffee cup becomes a staggering feat of strength as the muscles struggle to compensate for a weight they have long since forgotten how to measure. Even the simple act of standing up requires a Herculean effort from the core and leg muscles, which have grown soft and unaccustomed to the constant burden of mass. The blood, so used to roaming freely through the body, is once again pulled violently toward the feet, leading to a profound and dizzying fatigue that can last for weeks. Returning home is a slow, rhythmic process of relearning how to carry the weight of one's own existence, a final reminder that the high frontier was a beautiful, temporary dream. It is the price of re-entry, a heavy physical homecoming that anchors the mind once more to the solid ground of the birthplace. The traveller carries the memory of the stillness within them, a quiet spark of the infinite that remains even as the world pushes back. The journey ends not with a flight, but with a step, a heavy, deliberate commitment to the ground that once again claims the body as its own. The commitment to the ground is a distant memory for the orbital laboratory that sails through the night, a structure as immense as a football field yet existing in a state of eternal, weightless fall. This sprawling constellation of titanium and aluminum modules orbits the planet at 17,000 miles per hour, locked in a delicate dance where its velocity perfectly matches the curve of the horizon. Because it is perpetually falling toward the Earth, but moving fast enough to constantly miss it, the massive outpost effectively weighs nothing at all. This colossal artifact of human ingenuity defies the common logic of architecture, as its thousands of tons of mass require no foundation other than the vacuum itself. It glides with a ghostly silence through the thin upper reaches of the atmosphere, a silver needle threading the dark. To touch its exterior is to feel the cold, unyielding skin of a vessel that has successfully seceded from the gravity of its birthplace. The sheer scale of the station is a testament to what can be built when the burden of weight is removed from the engineering equation. Without the need to support its own mass against the crush of the surface, the laboratory can expand into a sprawling, intricate lattice of scientific potential. It is a floating island of logic, a heavy dream rendered light by the relentless speed of its journey. Surprisingly, the sophisticated high-tech interior of this orbital sanctuary relies on a humble, terrestrial invention to maintain a semblance of order in the drifting air. Every available bulkhead, equipment rack and flat surface is meticulously carpeted with strips of hook and loop fasteners, providing a tactile anchor for a world in motion. These rough grey patches are the only thing preventing tools, digital tablets, and food pouches from wandering into the dark recesses of the modules. The sound of the fasteners being pulled apart, a sharp rhythmic rasp, becomes the primary acoustic signal of productivity within the laboratory. An astronaut might secure a wrench to their leg or a laptop to the wall, creating a temporary workspace that ignores the traditional constraints of orientation. It is a simple, effective solution that turns the entire interior into a functional three-dimensional storage unit. This Velcro-laden landscape allows the crew to focus on their complex scientific objectives without the constant nagging fear of losing critical equipment to a stray air current. The fasteners act as the invisible hands of the station, gently gripping everything that is not actively being held. In this way, The most advanced laboratory in human history is held together by the same mechanical simplicity used on a child's shoe. If we were to look closer at the exterior of this floating complex, we would see massive golden wings unfurled against the deep blackness of the solar system. These enormous solar arrays, stretching out into the void, are the primary lungs of the outpost, harvesting the raw energy of the sun to power the life-sustaining machinery within. They articulate with a silent mechanical grace, constantly rotating on sophisticated joints to track the distant star as the station hurtles through its 90-minute day. The movement is so slow and deliberate that it is almost imperceptible to the human eye, yet it is a constant, vital adjustment to the shifting geometry of the orbit. These shimmering blankets of silicon cells convert the blinding light of the sun into a steady stream of electricity, fueling the experiments and the atmosphere scrubbers. Without this constant harvest of light, the laboratory would quickly grow cold and silent, a dead husk in the vacuum. The solar arrays are a visual bridge between the technological heart of the station and the primal power of the cosmos. They represent a flawless integration of energy and motion, a system that survives by staying perfectly synchronized with the celestial rhythm. Watching them glow with reflected sunlight as the station crosses into the dayside is a reminder of our fundamental dependence on the stars. Notice the cool, steady pressure of your own surroundings right now, a solid reality that requires no tracking or fasteners to keep you safely in place. Deep within the lower modules of the station lies the cupola, a small circular observation deck featuring 7 thick crystalline windows that look directly down at the turning world. This panoramic sanctuary offers an unbroken view of the silent cosmos, a visual experience so profound that it often leaves the crew in a state of quiet, meditative awe. The thick, multi-layered glass acts as a transparent shield, allowing the human eye to witness the raw, vibrant colours of the planet without the interference of an atmosphere. The central window is the largest ever flown in space, providing a godlike perspective on the shifting weather patterns and the glowing veins of human civilization. Astronauts often spend their few free moments floating in this glass dome, watching the continents slide past in a slow, majestic blur. It is a place of absolute visual clarity, where the immense scale of the Earth is finally understood not as a map, but as a single, fragile jewel. This observation deck serves as the psychological heart of the station, a place where the isolation of the mission is balanced by the overwhelming beauty of the home planet. The windows are portals to a different reality, offering a glimpse of the infinite through a lens of high-strength sapphire and quartz. To stare through them is to feel the true depth of the void while remaining safely cradled in a shell of human warmth. This structure of life is protected by thick, resilient layers of Kevlar and specialized metal shielding that blanket the exterior of the pressurized modules. While the interior feels like a safe, familiar room, the outer skin is a rugged armor designed to withstand the violent impacts of microscopic meteorites and orbital debris. These tiny particles, travelling at speeds several times faster than a rifle bullet, pose a constant, invisible threat to the structural integrity of the laboratory. The shielding is a complex, multi-layered sandwich of materials that absorbs the kinetic energy of an impact, breaking the projectile apart before it can pierce the inner hull. It is a silent, defensive wall that stands between the crew and the absolute vacuum of the surrounding space. The knowledge of this protection allows the inhabitants to work and sleep with a sense of security, trusting in the mechanical resilience of their home. Every inch of the station's surface is a carefully engineered barrier, a technological skin that mimics the protective atmosphere of the Earth. It is a reminder that in the high frontier, safety is a deliberate manufactured state achieved through the mastery of materials. This armor is the quiet guardian of the mission, a layer of strength that keeps the silence of the void on the outside. Surprisingly, the absolute isolation of the laboratory requires a complex and invisible network of hidden pipes to perform a miracle of mechanical alchemy. Every drop of moisture within the station, including the sweat from an astronaut's brow, The moisture in their breath, and even their urine, is captured and processed through a rigorous filtration system. This advanced technology recycles these fluids back into pristine, crystal-clear drinking water that is often purer than the water found in many terrestrial cities. This closed-loop system is an essential requirement for survival in a place where no new resources can be easily harvested from the environment. It represents a total commitment to sustainability, turning the waste products of life back into the fuel for continued existence. The crew lives within a perfectly balanced cycle of renewal, where every molecule of water is treated as a precious and finite resource. Drinking a glass of water on the station is an act of trust in the hidden machinery that hums behind the bulkheads. It is a tangible proof that the most basic requirements for life can be maintained even in the most inhospitable of deserts. This cycle of recycling is the invisible thread that keeps the human presence alive in the vacuum, a testament to our ability to create a home out of nothing. Let your mind drift into the sensation of your own steady heartbeat, a reliable internal rhythm that mirrors the quiet, constant recycling of life within the metal walls. Notice how the interior of the modules is interlaced with thousands of cables and wires that weave along the curved walls like a complex system of technological veins. These lines of data and power are meticulously color-coded, creating a vibrant, organized map of the station's internal logic and health. They carry the electricity from the solar arrays to the scientific racks and transport the massive amounts of data generated by the crew's research back to the ground. The sheer density of this wiring is a visual record of the immense complexity required to maintain a human presence in orbit. Each bundle is carefully secured and labelled, ensuring that the crew can quickly diagnose and repair any system failure that might occur. This orderly chaos is the nervous system of the station, a network that connects every module into a single functioning organism. Touching these cables, one can feel the subtle, vibrating pulse of the power flowing through the structure. They are the conduits of the mission, the invisible strings that hold the entire operation together in the dark. In the stillness of the laboratory, this network provides a sense of connection and purpose, a reminder that the station is a living, breathing machine. If we were to look closer at the design of the equipment and furniture within the modules, we would see that every piece of machinery is meticulously crafted with soft, rounded edges. In a world where movement is frictionless and propulsion is effortless, the danger of an accidental high-speed collision with a sharp corner is a constant concern. Designers have eliminated every jagged point and hard angle to prevent injury as crew members glide and tumble through the corridors. This ergonomic philosophy turns the entire interior into a forgiving, aquatic environment where the body can move with confidence. Even the scientific racks and computer terminals are encased in smooth, curved housings that feel soft to the touch. It is an architecture of safety, a design language that acknowledges the unique physics of a weightless body in motion. The touch of a titanium handrail is cool and smooth, its rounded profile perfectly fitted to the grip of a human hand. These handholds are the primary anchors of the station, providing a secure point of contact for a body that is perpetually trying to drift away. The thoughtful design of these small details is what makes the station feel like a home rather than a cold, industrial machine. Feel the weight of your hands resting now, appreciating the sharp, solid edges of your own world that require no such softening to keep you safe. Despite the endless miles of wiring and the cold, unyielding metal of the bulkheads, the station eventually develops an incredibly warm, safe, and deeply lived-in atmosphere. Over years of continuous occupation, the modules have become saturated with the familiar smells of human life, the soft sounds of conversation, and the personal touches of the various crews. It is no longer just a laboratory or a vessel, but a true home that carries the collective memory of everyone who has ever dwelled within its walls. The walls are decorated with photographs of families, small mementos from different cultures, and the worn patches of previous missions. This accumulation of human history softens the hard edges of the technology, creating a sanctuary of warmth in the middle of a desert of stars. The station feels alive, a vibrant outpost of civilization that has successfully carved out a space for itself in the infinite dark. The crew finds comfort in the familiar hum of the machinery and the steady glow of the lights, a cocoon of life that shields them from the absolute void. This lived-in quality is the ultimate victory of the mission, the proof that we can take our humanity with us wherever we go. It is a place of peace and purpose, a floating sanctuary where the dream of the stars is finally and completely realized. This lived-in quality is the ultimate victory of the mission, the proof that we can take our humanity with us wherever we go. It is a place of peace and purpose, a floating sanctuary where the dream of the stars is finally and completely realized. Within this sanctuary, the very concept of time is fractured into a dazzling high-speed rhythm of light and shadow that redefines the terrestrial experience. Every 90 minutes, the orbital laboratory completes a full circuit around the world, slicing through the boundary between day and night with mechanical precision. This high-velocity journey grants the crew 16 glorious sunrises and 16 sunsets in a single terrestrial day. A rhythmic pulse of light that redefines the very nature of time. The sun does not merely rise, it explodes over the curved horizon, casting a blinding, brilliant blue reflection off the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. This sapphire glare is so intense it washes out the interior lights of the modules, flooding the workstation with a raw, unshielded solar fire. Watching the world ignite in this way is a sensory experience of overwhelming power, a reminder of the immense energy that sustains every living thing below. As the station hurtles toward the dark side, the colours shift through a kaleidoscopic spectrum of deep violets and glowing ambers before being swallowed by the absolute shadow. Each transition is a silent, cinematic masterpiece, occurring with a frequency that turns the passage of days into a fleeting, weightless memory. The traveller becomes a witness to the planet's relentless rotation, locked in a dance of light that never truly ends. Surprisingly, the magnificent lights of the poles do not appear as distant, flickering ghosts in the sky, but as towering three-dimensional curtains of living plasma. Auroras reveal their true majesty from this height, dancing just below the station's windows in vibrant shades of neon green and blood red. These curtains of ionized gas ripple and swell, tracing the invisible magnetic veins of the planet with a fluid, haunting grace. The station often glides directly through the upper margins of these geomagnetic storms, allowing the crew to peer deep into the swirling heart of the light. It looks as if the Earth is being crowned with a crown of shifting fire, a luminous barrier that protects the world from the solar wind. This plasma dance is entirely silent, a rhythmic and ghostly undulation that fills the void with a sense of profound, supernatural energy. Looking down into the emerald glow provides a perspective of the Earth as an active, electrical being. The light seems to have a liquid quality, flowing across the darkened continents like a river of captured starlight. It is a visual symphony of the high atmosphere, a reminder that the world is a dynamic engine of energy and magnetism. Deep within the dense blankets of cotton-like clouds, a different kind of electrical drama unfolds with startling regularity. From this orbital vantage point, lightning storms do not rumble or roar, but instead appear as rapid, silent flashbulbs popping beneath the surface of the weather. The clouds act as vast, translucent diffusers, turning the jagged bolts of electricity into soft, pulsating orbs of white and violet light. These silent explosions of energy ripple across thousands of miles of the planetary surface in the blink of an eye. The storm systems look like the firing neurons of a colossal planetary brain, flashing with a rhythmic intensity that can be seen from one horizon to the other. Each pop of light is a brief, brilliant window into the raw power of the climate, occurring in total, vacuum-sealed silence. Observe how these electrical pulses move in waves, following the invisible currents of the atmosphere with a sense of predatory purpose. the darkness of the night side is periodically shattered by these internal glows, revealing the massive scale of the cloud formations. It is a hauntingly beautiful sight, a visual record of the planet's constant churning effort to balance its own thermal energy. If we were to look closer at the darkened continents, we would see the delicate and fragile outlines of human civilization traced in gold and silver light. City lights at night emerge from the shadows like shimmering spiderwebs, marking the hubs and arteries of our collective existence. The patterns of these lights reveal the history and the movement of the species, from the dense, radiant grids of coastal metropolises to the lonely, winding threads of mountain roads. These glowing veins are a testament to the persistent human desire to push back the dark and build a home in the wilderness. From orbit, the lights of Tokyo, London, and New York are as bright and distinct as the constellations in the sky above. They represent billions of individual lives and stories, unified into a single luminous tapestry that clings to the skin of the rock. This visual record of our presence is both inspiring and deeply humbling in its perceived fragility. The civilization looks like a thin, glowing moss growing in the cracks of the planet's geography, a flicker of intelligence in the vast, silent dark. It is a view that provides a sense of profound connection to the distant, luminous collective of humanity, anchored to the world by the weight of our shared history. As you rest now, feel the steady, reliable weight of the air against your skin, a comfort that keeps you safe while the world above glows with these golden memories. This structure of life is supported by a barrier that reveals its true nature only when seen from the edge of the void. The atmosphere reveals itself as an unbelievably thin, glowing blue halo, a wisp of gas so delicate it looks as though a single breath could blow it away. Scientists often refer to it as the onion skin, a translucent layer of protection that shields all known life from the lethal cold and radiation of space. The sheer thinness of this blue line is a shocking sight for every traveller, serving as a visceral reminder of the fragility of our planetary sanctuary. It captures the sun's rays and scatters them into the spectrum of life, a vibrant blue ring that defines the very identity of our home. Against the absolute crushing blackness of the vacuum, this thin halo is the only thing standing between existence and nothingness. Seeing the atmosphere in this way permanently alters the soul's understanding of the environmental balance. It is not an infinite resource, but a finite and precious envelope that must be guarded with absolute care. The glow of the blue line is the most beautiful and terrifying thing in the cosmos, a thin ribbon of breath in the desert of the stars. Within this unified perspective, the lines that humans have drawn across maps for centuries simply cease to exist. Borders between countries are completely invisible from orbit, rendering the planet as a single, unified and breathing organism. The geography of the world, the sweeping mountain ranges, the deep basins of the oceans, and the vast green expanses of the forests, ignores the artificial divisions of history. Clouds move across the continents without regard for sovereignty, and rivers flow into seas that belong to everyone and no one in the silence of the vacuum. This visual erasure of geopolitical conflict provides a profound sense of clarity and peace to the weary traveller. It becomes impossible to see the other when the entire world is contained in a single sweeping glance through the glass. The planet is a closed system, a lone vessel carrying a diverse but singular crew through the darkness of the cosmos. This realization is a powerful catalyst for a new kind of global consciousness, a shift toward a perspective that values the unity of the whole over the division of the parts. From here, the only border that matters is the one between the light of the world and the dark of the void. Staring away from the vibrant sphere of the world into the deep blackness of the cosmos provides a stark and silent contrast to the colours of home. The void is not merely the absence of light, but a physical presence of absolute velvety black that feels deeper and more hollow than any darkness found on the ground. Against this infinite backdrop, the vibrant, chaotic colours of the earth, the sapphire oceans and emerald forests seem almost impossibly bright. The planet looks like a brilliant multicolored marble suspended in a vast empty gallery of shadow and starlight. This juxtaposition highlights the sheer improbability of our existence, a splash of beautiful color in a universe that is mostly silent, cold, and empty. The blackness of space is a mirror for the mind, a place where the lack of stimulus forces the inner consciousness to expand and reflect. Notice how the light of the sun, reflecting off the Pacific, creates a glare so pure it feels as though it could pierce the very soul. This balance of absolute light and infinite shadow is the fundamental reality of the high frontier. The world is a precious anomaly, a glowing heart beating in the middle of a vast and indifferent silence. Let your mind settle into the quiet stability of your own center, knowing that the heavy, protective blanket of the world is wrapped securely around you. Surprisingly, the simple act of looking down allows the spacefarer to witness a phenomenon that we usually observe by looking up into the night sky. Shooting stars or meteors burn up far below the station as they collide with the upper reaches of the atmosphere at incredible hypersonic speeds. Each meteor is a microscopic messenger from the solar system, meeting its end in a silent, beautiful flash of pure kinetic energy. Watching the shooting stars dive toward the world below is a haunting and beautiful reminder of the constant invisible rain that feeds the planet. It is an inverted perspective that turns the sky into a floor of light. The traveller is suspended above the fire, a witness to the constant interaction between the world and the deep dark. The sheer speed of the orbital journey makes entire continents slide past the window like a slow, majestic painting being endlessly pulled away. In the time it takes to have a simple, brief conversation, the station can cross the entire width of the Atlantic Ocean, or the vast red expanse of the Sahara. This motion is not accompanied by any sensation of wind or vibration. It is a perfectly smooth and silent glide through the thin upper atmosphere. The visual change is constant and mesmerizing, a shifting landscape of coral reefs, mountain peaks, and winding river deltas that slide into view and vanish. It looks as if the Earth is a living tapestry being unfurled for the traveller's private meditative viewing. The kinetic energy of the station is invisible, yet it is what keeps the crew suspended in their weightless sanctuary above the clouds. This high-velocity perspective provides a godlike mobility, allowing one to witness the immense diversity of the world in a single 90-minute cycle. It is a journey of impossible scale, where the map of the world comes to life in a vivid, high-velocity stream of colour and natural form. The traveller is a silent observer of a planet in motion, a witness to the grand, unfolding story of the rock. Ultimately, the act of witnessing the Earth suspended in the void permanently and fundamentally shifts a person's perspective of reality. This phenomenon, often called the overview effect, creates a profound sense of deep empathy for all living things and an urgent desire for environmental preservation. Seeing the world as a fragile, lonely island in the dark makes the petty conflicts and divisions of humanity seem utterly and completely insignificant. The astronaut returns to the ground with a soul that has been re-anchored to the planetary collective and the living biosphere. They carry the image of that thin blue halo and the borderless continents within them, a silent compass that guides their thoughts and actions for the rest of their lives. It is a transition from being a citizen of a single country to becoming a protector and steward of a single planet. This final wonder is the true purpose of the journey, the realization that we're not separate from the Earth, but an integral part of its living spirit. The weightless soul finds its weight again not in mass or gravity, but in a profound and lasting sense of responsibility. It is a return to the ground that is informed and transformed by the clarity of the infinite. To float in zero gravity is not merely to escape the physical pull of a planet, but to be cradled by the universe itself, suspended in a state of ultimate peace, where weight is an illusion, and every movement becomes a graceful extension of thought. The grand synthesis. To float in zero gravity is not merely to escape the physical pull of a planet, but to be cradled by the universe itself, suspended in a state of ultimate peace where weight is an illusion and every movement becomes a graceful extension of thought. The final wonder is the realization that we are never truly separated from the stars, for the same silence that fills the void now fills this quiet room. This grand synthesis marks the end of our orbital journey, as the mind begins to descend from the shimmering blue line of the atmosphere back into the heavy, comforting embrace of home. You have travelled through the dance of fluids and the art of weightless slumber, and now the journey returns to the stillness of your own body. If we were to look closer at your own physical form, we would see that the time for rest has finally arrived. Direct your attention now to the very tips of your toes, letting them grow heavy and still against the fabric of your blankets. Imagine the tension of the day simply evaporating, much like the water spheres that once drifted in a weightless laboratory, leaving your feet entirely relaxed and unburdened by the memory of the stars. Surprisingly, the body knows exactly how to surrender to the reliable pull of the earth as we move our focus upward through the ankles and the calves. Feel the muscles of your legs softening, sinking deeper into the supportive surface beneath you with every slow and rhythmic exhale. The neutral body posture of the orbital void is replaced by the profound, solid comfort of a bed that asks nothing of your strength. Deep within the muscles of the thighs and hips, a wave of tranquility is beginning to spread, erasing the last hold of the waking world. This sheltered space provides the perfect sanctuary for the lower back and spine to release their hidden tension and rest in their natural grounded alignment. Every vertebra settles into the soft topography of your mattress, anchored by the quiet and constant gravity of the home. Let your hands and fingers go limp, resting beside you like quiet shadows in the dim, warm light of the room. The arms, which once reached for titanium handrails in the dark, are now heavy and still, surrendering their mass to the peace of the night. Feel the shoulders drop away from the ears, melting into the pillow as the transition from the cosmos back to the bedroom becomes absolute and final. The air in the room is cool and still, moving in a slow, natural rhythm that matches the steady rise and fall of your chest. This quiet sanctuary is a place of absolute safety, where the only requirement is to simply be and to breathe. Notice how the fabric of the sheets feels against your skin, a soft and constant reminder of the solid world that holds you in this moment of total surrender. This quiet room is your whole world now, a place of profound rest and total equilibrium where the labour of the day is finally done. The heavy comfort of the blankets is a shield against the noise of the outside, allowing the spirit to drift into the deep, healing waters of sleep. Every breath is a step deeper into the dark, a slow-motion descent into a peace that knows no end and no disturbance. A deep sense of stillness is settling into the neck and the base of the skull, allowing the mind to let go of the last threads of thought. Every muscle in the jaw softens, and the tiny lines around the eyes smooth out as you sink into the thick, dark velvet of the night. The heaviness of the body is a beautiful thing, a steady anchor that ties you to the warmth of the bed and the safety of the house. The silence itself is a living thing, a soft blanket that covers the room and the mind alike. The world outside is distant and quiet, leaving only the peaceful, rhythmic hum of your own living breath. You're resting in a cocoon of warmth where the light has faded into a gentle, restorative shadow that calls you toward the dreams. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.